This podcast is sponsored by eBay Canada. eBay Canada is here to help. They've been supporting Canadian small business retailers for 25 years and have recently launched their Up and Running program to meet an urgent need to get business online today. New business sellers can get a free e-commerce store for 90 days when they visit ebay.ca/upandrunning.
It's Toronto's podcast on the Canada's Podcast Network.
Nice to see you, and as I said, welcome to Canada's podcast. And as we said, let's kick off. Introduce yourself to everyone. Tell them a little bit about you, the person, and you, the entrepreneur, basically.
Sure. Thank you, Phil, for having me on today. It's great to be here. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the guests you've had are either friends of mine or people I've interacted with. So it's a great setup you have to share the stories of entrepreneurs across Canada. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So a little bit about myself. I'll share about where I came from because that really says a lot about what I'm up to now. Mm-hmm. I was born in the Middle East and moved around a tremendous amount in the first 12 years of life. I probably went to 10 or 12 schools before undergrad. Every year, every 2 years, different school, different city.
Been there, done that, yeah.
Okay. And if that's all you know, that's normal, right? I had no idea that there are people out there that live their entire lives in one city or with one group of friends. Yeah. So for me, every move meant new school, new city, new friends, always try and fit in again and keep moving. Yeah. Until finally, 1996, the whole family moved to Canada. I did high school in two different schools, of course. Yeah. The one plus side of all of those moves is I ended up, just by virtue of the schools I went to, skipping 2 years of schooling along the way. Mm-hmm. So I finished high school at 16. And in my high school, I said, okay, what do I want to do afterwards? I bought my LSAT books. I bought my GMAT books. I was thinking of medicine. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, engineering was the hardest to get into. So I said, it must be good. So let's apply it. Let's try and do that for not a whole lot of reason other than that. Mm-hmm. And I did like computers. In kindergarten, I remember learning about this programming language called Logo, which is a turtle that moved around the screen and you could make shapes. And I still remember that from kindergarten. And I remembered when we first bought an IBM XT computer, 2.5 megahertz, no hard drive, 5.5 or 5.25 inch floppy disks. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I loved it. And I was always into computers, but never thought that would be exactly what I'd get into. But I ended up going into engineering, went through schooling. I applied to IBM. I'd actually missed the deadline for the application for the internship. Right. And through a friend of mine that worked there, I managed to get invited anyway to the interview slot. The day before, I managed to get on. Gone through the interview, went to IBM, kept moving. And I remember one time at IBM, I asked my manager, I said, hey, so what's next for me? I'm here for the last year. When's my next promotion? And they said, in 4 to 5 years, we can talk about it. And for me, I said, wow, that's 5 or 6 years in total before the next step. That feels like a long time. So I applied for a consulting role at McKinsey & Company on their website, went through the process, ended up spending 7 years over there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Loved my experience. I took a 2-year break to do my business school in the middle. Mm-hmm. It's very standard for everyone to go do your MBA, come back. Mm-hmm. And in that time, I started working with a lot of insurance companies and sitting with the management teams or the directors. The discussion was always on one side of insurance, the home and car insurance, because that's perceived to be a bit easier. It's a much bigger market, a bigger headache. And people forgot about or chose not to focus on the commercial insurance side. So that's insurance for businesses. And I really saw an opportunity there. So I ended up quitting at the end of 2015 to co-found Zensurance. Mm-hmm. And I had thought about quitting for many, many years prior to that. As much as I loved the job and I had a great time, I saw my friends launching different businesses. Most failed actually, and some succeeded, as is normal. And I thought to myself, if I don't do this now, I don't know if I ever will. It's always harder. The longer you go, you make more money, You're more settled. I was about to get married. I constantly did the net present value analysis of the job versus a startup. And the job always won. So I never quit. And eventually I took the decision and then moved on and launched Zensurance at the beginning of 2016.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, were your parents entrepreneurs or not?
No. So in my extended family, there's a lot of small business owners.
Okay.
My parents and my sister were very much, hey, let's do a job. My sister's a doctor. My brother is an entrepreneur, so he loves being in the construction space. But generally, my family's been non-entrepreneurs.
Okay. Because there's, in terms of why you become an entrepreneur,
Right.
most that, I mean, I worked it out. I was at 14 different places, over 17 years kind of thing.
Okay.
So the same kind of thing. And maybe that's means that corporate life, you never, that waiting for 5 years for the next move, maybe that we just don't have the patience. I don't know. I'm always interested to know, why would you become an entrepreneur? Like you were with McKinsey, you were with IBM, I was with GM and big names, it's like, why the heck did we leave, and go it on our own when, most people clamor to be with those big names. So it's just, it's kind of interesting. It's I haven't worked that profile thing out in terms of why. So you, how long have you been in Toronto now? Then
Since '96, so 24 years.
Oh God, you're local then.
I am local. That's right. This is home.
So why stay here? What are the benefits of being in Toronto? I mean, I assume you have a reasonably international view of things. What's the benefit of being here, you think?
Yeah. So when I was doing my MBA in the US, I had the choice of staying there or coming back to Toronto. And just the way McKinsey works, you can live in one place and work elsewhere. So I said, I love living in Toronto. My friends are here. I had relatives. This is where I was comfortable. So I lived here, but most of my work was elsewhere. And so that's why I came back. And then why be an entrepreneur here is just this was where my network ended up being. Okay. Given I've lived here so long, my professional life has been here. But again, my biggest investor is from the US. So just physically being here doesn't limit where you can do business.
No, I totally agree with you. I have this question, what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur? But I think most people think it's sort of getting rich, the material side of it, which definitely has a part. But what for you, is that it, or what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I agree with you. If you are trying to get into entrepreneurship with the sole purpose of making money, you're going to have a really long uphill battle. The majority of people never cash it in. And so you'll be sorely disappointed if that's your primary reason. For me, it was it was two-part. One was the allure of it and just what you see other people, the excitement they have with about what they're doing, the impact they feel like they have, the control they have of what they do day to day. That really appealed to me. Being able to have an idea, marshal a team, bring a set of investors and supporters, and really live out a vision. That was the most exciting thing for me. And at the same time, I said, look, let's say I fail. I tried once or two or three times. I can always go back to a job. The job of any form, of some form, will always be there. In my mind, taking this high risk of cutting off the salary, still paying rent, still meeting all your obligations, it just gets harder and harder later on in life. So it was part the excitement and the control in that part that I mentioned, but also, I don't know if I can ever do this later in life. So,
you're in the insurance business. You've brought, I would imagine, a logic/technical approach to it with your computer engineering background. So what are you most excited about in your approach in that business today?
Yeah. I'll give you an example of something from this weekend, which really illustrates what excites me. So I bought a leather recliner this weekend from Lazy Boy.
Okay.
And it's something I wanted next to my desk to read a book or something. And And I knew what I wanted. I checked the website. I go in and tell the person, hey, this is the one I like. Okay, great. All right, let me pull out the swatch. So she went and looked for piles and piles of leather. Which one do you like? Looking up codes. Okay, I like this one. Great. Let me pull out the pricing manual. All right, out comes the pricing manual. This option, that option, that option. It's all paper. Let's go to the computer. And then a form was printed. The form was printed, and we started filling out
I
things.
Can't believe it. You're telling me that. I can't believe it. You know.
And then we go to the next desk. So now this is the third desk. We go to the next desk where there has to be faxed into some central location, and on and on. And it took me 35 minutes to buy a couch. That's only 35 minutes. In insurance, it can take you 2 to 3 weeks to buy a policy. And it's the same manual process. People after people after people, probably after government, insurance is going to be the second biggest users of faxes. Maybe healthcare is somewhere in there. So our vision, what really excites me, is eliminating all of that waste, that overhead. There's a lot of biases that come in, a lot of conflicts of interest. So we just want to have a machine do that in a clean, simple, proper way. And just make it as you would expect. You know, you can buy a car online, a plane ticket. I ordered a book yesterday and it's going to be delivered in 1 hour. Like within less than 24 hours, I have it. Why can't I buy a $500 insurance policy like that? So that's the part that frustrates me, but also is the reason we exist.
Access eBay's 170 plus million buyers around the world. With eBay Canada, you can stay local, sell global, and power up. That's ebay.ca/up and running. Offer is open until August the 22nd. So, I mean, we were just talking, we've had a couple of other peers, if you like, that are trying to transform the insurance business. I mean, it's a very conservative business, and it's dominated by the few, not the many. Okay. So, you know, can you impact the future?
Yeah, I hope so. There's no guarantee. We're 4 years in and there's still no guarantee. The industry is often described as male, pale, and stale, just because nothing ever changes, right? Policies are still sold the way they were 50 years ago. So it's a fair question. Our whole reason of existing is because it's this way. So it creates the opportunity. Can we impact it? We're already seeing signs that we are impacting it 4 years in. It's not a long time.
That's good.
We write with 50 different insurance companies in Canada now. A handful of them have given us authority to issue policies on their behalf. So we issue the policy, and 1 month later they realize we've issued the policy. That's the way it works. So they're now trusting us to that level. We're almost at 100 employees. We're licensed coast to coast. So there's some early signs that customers are trusting us. Over 10,000 customers, business owner customers. So there's a lot of early signs, but who knows what's going to happen over the next 4 years.
Okay. So let's move on to challenges. You know, I mean, I think the big listening, learning thing is how we all face challenges, and remarkably, we don't necessarily all have the same formula for overcoming challenges. So when you're faced with those unexpected challenges, I mean, we can use logic as much as we want, but we still hit things that we don't anticipate. How do you typically handle those? How do you get over them? Because they can be, you know, critical, basically. Yeah.
And we face these types of things every month or 2 months, some big issue. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm not a very emotional person. Probably not a very good thing for my family, but in a business context, ups, downs, you would not see it. I'm very stoic that way. But I think for me, it's I use typically a couple of times a week, early morning. I'm typically up at 6 a.m. I'll go to a coffee shop in a pre-COVID world or some quiet corner with just a notebook, and I'll make my notes. No laptop, no phone, I just do that. So for me, if there's a big challenge like that, I'll try and break it down, assess it, think about it, reflect on the past, think about the future, and really just make paper notes. And then I have a really good network of other startup founders and friends in the industry and people at insurance companies that I can pick up the phone and call or exchange emails, get together. It's bouncing off ideas of a lot of people. So it's part one is me really just breaking it down, making sure I understand what it is, and then relying on my network to help solve it. And quite often our own employees will solve the problem before I even hear about it. So they might be doing the same thing.
So what's been the greatest challenge to date that you've had to overcome? Or maybe I shouldn't say maybe you haven't overcome it, but what's been the greatest challenge?
Yeah, the greatest challenge, and it's something we are still working on, is convincing more and more insurance companies that online distribution, the one we are putting forward, is the only model that we think will succeed in the way we're looking at it.
Then the current pandemic must have helped you in the sense, like all of us in the digital side of things. I mean, it's speeding it up.
Absolutely. So it's really convincing them that, hey, yes, there will be some room for in-person sales, but the average customer is now used to Amazon and Uber and Uber Eats, these apps that are online, that's really instant gratification. People want the same for insurance. And that they should be supporting that shift, not resisting it. So we've made progress, but there's still more to go. And absolutely, COVID helped. There was a handful of insurance companies that only accepted physical signatures before. That's gone now. Electronic signatures are okay. Many only accepted check payments. That's gone. They're saying, please, no more checks, only electronic. So this has really helped move some things forward. Yeah,
definitely. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
I think I waited too long to try the entrepreneurship route.
How old were you when you stepped out of McKinsey?
32, maybe 33.
Hey, you were about right.
I feel like I should have left earlier. I left what I think was probably the last point at which I would have been comfortable leaving, as comfortable as one could be. So my advice to my younger self would be, take more risks, take them earlier, and don't worry about things. Things have a way of working themselves out. You can get a job later. If not IBM, then something else. If not McKinsey, then something else.
What's the best piece of advice that you've received? Not just received, but, it resonated and you kind of carry it around with you.
It was that morning routine was a piece of advice I got from a local Toronto founder. He said he would take 1 or 2 mornings each week to do exactly that. And this was maybe 3 years ago. I started doing that right away.
I do that. I actually do that as well. So it's interesting.
It helps so much because as soon as you step into the office or you open your laptop, you get WhatsApp messages, text messages, emails, Slack, everything. You just can't focus. You end up spending time on the urgent things rather than the important things. And when you carve out your morning, you can focus on the non-urgent but important things.
Yeah, I stay I stay like between 6 and 8:30. I don't connect with people. I solve things. I solve things, create things, go away. That's my creative time. I might be doing things and getting paid for doing them, but I do them without interference. And I find I can do more in 2.5 hours than I can do in the rest of the day in terms of original thinking.
Absolutely, it's your mind is clear. No distractions. You get so much more done.
Okay, so let's move on to what I term rapid fire questions. Don't think too much about them. Just go for it. So, if you weren't doing what you were doing now, what would you be doing instead, and why would you be doing it?
I probably would still be at McKinsey because that would have been the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, and you kind of enjoyed it from what you said.
Oh, I loved it. It was great.
It's that kind of thing. It's a problem solution you brought in. You work on the problem, you solve it, off to the next one, kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah.
What book are you currently reading or listening to that unless it's crummy, but but otherwise, or what book would you really recommend, or a couple of books that kind of really made a dent in your psyche, basically?
There's one I read recently and one that I'm rereading now. Mm-hmm. The one I'm rereading now is So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport.
Okay.
The whole philosophy there is don't follow your passion. Everyone says follow your passion. The book is about don't follow your passion. Mm-hmm. Follow what you're good at. You will become passionate about it.
I think that's true.
I believe that. I was not passionate about insurance before. Mm-hmm. I remember my only experience with insurance when I was younger was the old guy who used to come to events and parties in the community center to sell me car insurance, or my parents. I always thought there's no way I'm going to be that guy, but here I am. I am that guy now, a licensed insurance broker. Yeah. But I've become passionate about it. I love the industry, having spent time and gotten good at certain aspects of it. So I like that book a lot. Mm-hmm. And the other one is by Ben Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That should be mandatory reading for every entrepreneur, talking about the character, grit. I think that is probably the most important skill set someone needs to either be born with or learn. I believe people can learn it to be successful over time. And that book is fantastic about it.
So thinking of that one word, if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
It would be now, I would hope for it to be grit. Because of all of the challenges we've been through as a company, either raising money, hiring employees.
I think grit, tenacity, perseverance, so these are all really good. If you're not that, then you're not going to be an entrepreneur, basically.
It will be very hard. There's a great movie called True Grit. It's about a little girl's journey and her grit, and it's a great movie.
Yeah. What's keeping you up at night?
So I recently gave up caffeine, and so my sleep has gotten so much better. So I'm not as up as much anymore. But the times that I am up, probably a couple times a month, thinking about the evolution of the company. At the pace we're growing, we're a new company every 9 months.
Right. Okay.
Like maybe 50% bigger, more insurance partners, more customers, different scope added in. Mm-hmm. So really thinking about what do we need to do differently to be ready for the next evolution of the company? Mm-hmm. What skill sets do we need? What partnerships do we need? How much capital do we need? Yeah. Probably a couple times a month, I'm up at 3 or 4 in the morning. I can't sleep, and I'm thinking about this. Mm-hmm. And how do someone that's like an individual contributor now, will they make it to the manager level? What will it take for us to support them on that journey so that they can take their division to the next level? So really, what's next for everybody in the company?
So what's your most favorite place in the world? Is it Toronto or is it somewhere else?
Depends. If you're asking favorite place to live, absolutely Toronto. Mm-hmm. There's only a few other places that I think I could go to for a period of time, but I'd want to come back.
Yeah, GTHA is, that's Hamilton behind. GTHA is pretty awesome, basically.
Yeah. So if it's to live, without hesitation, I'd be here. Mm-hmm. If it's to visit, there's lots of different places for different reasons. Mm-hmm. But I think the simple answer to your place is Toronto.
So you probably heard the tropical island question. If you say you've listened to some of your other buddies that have done it,
Yeah.
And we do it for kind of fun anyway. So there's a small tropical island in the middle of the ocean. There's no technology. All there is an old style phone booth, basically. We drop you off there, and you can make a phone call whenever you want for us to come and pick you up.
Right.
How long do you last? And what do you do?
So as an entrepreneur, we never like to hear no. We never like to see boundaries. We always like to challenge things. So first thing I do is challenge the phone and see if I can actually make a call and order supplies, my laptop, a satellite phone, something, so I can set up an office there.
Yeah.
But let's say that's not possible for whatever reason. I do the scout for supplies, food, water, etc.
Yeah.
And I've always thought about going to one of those Vipassana 10-day silence retreats. I just thinking about it, I don't know how I would force myself to disengage from life for 10 days. So if I truly was stuck on this island, I would spend those 10 days. That would be a sign to say, this is now your time to do the 10-day silence retreat. So I would do that and then call to be taken home.
Okay. Interesting. It's funny how people respond to that. Okay. It's good. So, Danish, thanks very much for the interview. Really good, really good input. Some good gems there. And I always like, people listen and they see us, and they often have questions, especially of you, not so much of me. So how can people get a hold of you if they do?
Best is LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn, Danish Yusuf, and shoot me a message or engage with me there. I'm often active on LinkedIn, but that's the best place.
Okay, all right, that's great. Danish, once again, thanks very much for coming on Canada's podcast. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
This podcast is sponsored by eBay Canada. eBay Canada is powering Canadian small businesses. Go to ebay.ca/upandrunning to open your online shop.